Hello everyone. In today's video I am going to continue looking at the Nimzo Indian defense with force move queen b3, and the game is from none other than former world champion Botvinnik. He actually used to play this line quite a bit. So let's see how this game went. So bishop b4, queen b3, and here black played c5. So this is theoretically speaking, this is the only move which gives black a good position, so to say, out of the opening. So here white takes bc5, and now black has a couple of moves. There is knight c6, there is queen a5, there is bishop c5. All are quite possible. Here black played knight a6. This is a rather inaccurate way to protect this bishop on b4. But this move is at the same time very, very tempting, because black wants to at some moment take back with the knight on c5. And this would be really wonderful if this pawn could be on a5, because then after knight c5 now the bishop is hanging. So that's the problem with knight a6, that even though black wants to take on c5, they cannot really do with a hanging bishop on b4. So white immediately goes a3, and by this forcing a decision from black, and obviously knight takes on c5 is not possible. Most likely in a future video I will show what happens if the bishop takes on c3, but in this one black took on c5, knight f3, and short castle. So here you can already see that, okay, what is the problem with black's position? Like, only there is one problem, that this knight is seriously misplaced on a6. It should, of course, rather develop to c6 or d7. On a6, it's doing nothing. It can basically go back to b8 or c7, which are both really bad options. So the only good option is to bring it to c5, which is currently occupied by the bishop. So yeah, this whole thing is about whether black manages to bring the knight to c5 or not. So now Botvinnik played bishop g5. It doesn't do too much about the situation of this knight. So the recommendation in the course for white is to play queen to c2. And now it's quite logical, I believe, because the goal is to play b4 and therefore prevent this knight joining the game via c5. So that's the course, and yeah, of course, analysis continues, but this is a kind of key move for white. So instead, bishop g5 happened, and okay, we will see that how things could have get kind of complicated here. So black went bishop e7, breaking the pin. Botvinnik played e4. So that is logical, and okay, now basically black had two choices at this moment, d6 or d5. Like e5 is coming from white, so black should do something. In the game it was d6. In case of d5, the normal reaction from white is to play e5. So normally we don't want, with our king still being in the center, don't want to open the position too much, but rather, just push this pawn to e5, keep the bishop closed, and, try to finish development with the bishop and have some space in the center. So just one illustrative line, that if white would go for the pawn, like take, then the knight is coming back to the game, and as I said, it's very crucial. And for example, in case of queen c2, there is already spectacular move knight to e4. So the knight is hanging on e4, but so does the bishop on g5. So for example, knight e4, knight e4. If queen takes on e4, then simply bishop g5 with some big threat. And in case of bishop e7, simply queen e7, bishop e2, bishop f5, some threats on the queen, and after queen d1, rook d8. The engine is just saying it's complete equality, but it's not that difficult to understand. Black will in some way pin back this pawn on d5, and we just have a symmetrical position. So taking is not good, but playing e5 is pretty nice. So black plays knight to e4. Now bishop e7, queen e7, knight e4, d e4, and knight d2. And white has the better chances because this pawn on e4 is quite weak. So for example, knight c5, queen e3, b4 is coming, knight e4 is coming. Position is quite good for white. So black decided to play d6. So the point is to prevent e5. Botvinnik played bishop e2, and black played bishop d7. So wants to bring the bishop to c6 and attack e4. It also has a trap, which obviously Botvinnik is not going to fall for, but it's quite an unusual queen trap. In case of queen b7, knight c5, queen b4, only square for the queen, and after a5 there are no more squares for our queen, so we should resign. Bishop d7, but Botvinnik castled here. Once again, it's similarly to bishop g5, what he played earlier. I believe short castle is a little bit inaccurate. And again, if you know that key thing is this knight on a6, the move is not so difficult. It's again queen to c2. It's also overprotecting the pawn on e4, so bishop c6 is not a tempo, but extremely importantly, knight c5 is also not a tempo. So e4 is protected, we can already kick back this knight with b4 and have a much better position. So this was better. He castled. Black played bishop c6, attacking e4, now queen c2. And now black made a serious mistake, which actually doesn't look like a serious mistake at all. It looks like a useful inclusion, and against many players it would have worked very well, but not against Botvinnik. So black played h6. I mean, just opening the back rank. And it's also quite typical in this structure when white has pawns like mainly e4, but also on c4, that when bishop h4 happens, then there is this idea of knight to h5. So while if the bishop is on g5, okay, I can show it. I don't have to explain it so deeply. So like if knight to h5, now the bishop can simply retreat in this diagonal. So white doesn't have to trade, and f4 square is under control. Knight is doing nothing on h5. But after including h6 and bishop to h4, in this case you can see that bishop can only go to g3, but then black gets the bishop pair, or white takes, and now the knight has some good square on f4. So this is kind of a standard idea for black. I have to say that in this particular case it doesn't work because we still have b4, which is more important than the f4 square, but in general this idea exists. So what is the problem with bishop h4 then? Black plays knight to c5. So now 3 attackers on the pawn. White has to do something. It's e5. D takes. Knight takes on e5. And now, of course, white would like to play b4. But now black is kind of in time to play a5, and a4 is a big positional threat to stabilize the knight. So basically white has to try b4, but things are just working out for black because after a takes b, ab, rook takes a1, rook a1, black has a very nice move here, which kind of exploits bishop h4, that's queen to d4. Attacking h4, attacking e5, and white has nothing then to simplify into an equal endgame, like too many pieces are hanging. Also knight e4 can come in the next move. So for example, bishop takes f6, bishop f6, knight takes, pawn takes, like everything is getting traded, and with opposite colored bishops it will soon be just a draw. So that would have been the problem with bishop h4. But Botvinnik played bishop f4, which is a much better move and has a key difference compared to the lines what I have just showed to you. But okay, first let's see what was the correct move with black. The correct move was obviously to bring the knight to c5. So not to let white to improve the position with the bishop on f4, but first bring the knight so the pawn is under attack. And in case of e5, d takes on e5, knight takes on e5. Black has this important move, bishop e4, which is kind of completely, useless in previous lines. Now it's very good because after trade on e4, this knight gains a tempo on the g5 bishop. So of course, with the bishop on h4 or f4, this idea just doesn't exist in this position. It would be white to move with the bishop on f4 and some bishop f3 and so on. It would be just horrible. So yeah, that would have been a good move for black, and the position is quite okay. So instead h6, bishop f4, excellent move. And now black played finally knight c5, but he is just one move late. So Botvinnik played e5. Very strong move. Knight fe4 from black. So now let's see what was the difference. So d takes on e5, knight e5. So I already showed this position, bishop is on f4 instead of h4. That's all the difference for now. What is the key to stop b4 somehow? Black plays a5, white plays b4, take, rook takes, everything is the same. Queen comes to d4, again is the main resource for black, attacking the bishop. And here comes the difference that after knight takes on c6, so first of all it's an attack on the knight and the queen, so black has to take back. And now, if the bishop would be on h4, it would be still hanging. And white either takes on f6 or plays bishop g3, black plays knight e4, and the position is fine. But here there is bishop e3, attacking the queen and winning material on c5. So that's the difference between bishop f4 and bishop h4. So therefore black couldn't go for this line. He went knight fe4. Yeah, and from this moment on, okay, white has the advantage. I mean, the first move is a little bit inaccurate, so Botvinnik immediately took on d6. It allows some improvement to black compared to the game. So it would have been just great to bring the rook to d1. Keep the pin and put more pressure on d6. for example, in case of knight c3, queen c3, knight e4, there are a lot of moves with the queen. Maybe e1 is a good square, so later bishop d3 can come. The pressure is still on the d file, and it's really unpleasant for black. So it was better. Botvinnik played e d6, which would be similarly good, and it was, but it needed a mistake from black. Black took back with the bishop on d6, I mean, which of course he has to do at some moment, but it was very important to include this knight takes c3. So the point is that DE doesn't work because there is a check here. And in case of queen c3, now black takes back. So let's say rook a to d1. And after knight e4, again the queen goes somewhere, and yeah, black's queen can also, and most likely it goes to e7. And the difference is that this problematic knight from c5 managed to eventually get into the game on e4. So it's a hugely improved version to the game. So it was missed. Bishop d6 was played, and now rook a d1. Now big trouble. So now knight takes on c3. Probably white just takes back with the queen is unpleasant. So black went queen to e7. Yeah, queen c7 may look also possible, but there is a very nice way for white just to take d6, knight d6, and then b4. Using this pin, and c5 is winning material in the next move. So queen e7 is kind of must. Now bishop d6, knight d6, and knight e5. So the position simplified a little bit, but the problems for black remain. This knight on c5 is not good, and this knight on d6 is also extremely shaky, while white has an easy plan of pushing b4, c5, and just pushing the queenside pawns. So the rest of the game was relatively straightforward and easy for Botvinnik. There was this tactical trick of bishop g2, but it doesn't quite work. King g2, queen g5, knight g4, saving the knight, and the other one is hanging on d6. So rook fd8 was played. Now b4, knight d7, knight c6, gaining the pair of bishops and the weakness on c6. Now c5. And black went passive with knight e8. Knight f5 was probably better, but still absolutely not enough for an equal possession. An interesting move for white is to play bishop a6, just to fix completely the queen side, and then have some threats to attack the weak pawn. Also knight e4, knight d6 is there. But yeah, knight e8 was even worse. Now queen a4, rook c8, bishop a6 with the tempo, rook c7, and now the knight is coming. Knight d6 is an idea. So after knight f6, quite instructive move here. Knight d6 is super tempting, and I believe, it's very easy to go wrong with such a move. Like, okay, knight d6, it's not possible to take, and the knight is on the 6th rank, but apparently it would just help black because there is knight d5. So now not only knight d6 is a threat, but also knight c3. And suddenly things are not so clear. But Botvinnik didn't miss this thing, so actually not the knight should get to d6, but rather the rook. Because once the rook is on d6, the knight cannot cut it out because it's already inside the position. We will see it later. So knight takes f6. So black took with the queen. In case knight takes f6, the rook would arrive to d6, and again now knight d5 does nothing because the rook is already attacking the pawn. So black took with the queen, rook d3, threatening to double, rook d8, rook d1. takes d3, takes d3. So queen a1 now is nothing. The rook can just return to d1. Black played queen e7, maybe hoping for some rook d7 in the future, but Botvinnik says that no. King h7, rook d8, g6, and g3. Very good move. Just not to worry about the back rank at any moment. Black played knight f6. I mean, it's really hard to suggest any move, and knight f6, quite importantly, is threatening with rook d7. Trading the rooks, but now queen d6 was played. So this is excellent move, and yeah, it cannot be taken, unfortunately, from black, because rook d7 only move, and then take, bishop c8. The knight moves, and then the d pawn promotes. So on queen d6, knight d5 was tried, and now bishop c4. Yeah, basically white can do anything what he wants, because okay, the knight has to kind of protect the heavy pieces protect each other, and the bishop is kind of completely free to move anywhere. And okay, Botvinnik decided to just attack the c6 pawn, and yeah, pretty much that decided the game. Black played king g7. Okay, it was not too late to blunder, because after bishop c6, rook takes c6 would have won the game for black. So queen c6, queen d8, of course, is not too good. But white just moved the rook to a8, and now there is the threat of bishop takes on c6. So for example, if h5, I guess it's also possible to take, because take, rook c6, and d7 pawn is promoting. So rook e8, black took on d6, rook d7, e d5, and whether black overstepped the time limit or just resigned, I don't know, but the position is hopeless. After rook a7, d4, king f1, the king is just easily catching the d pawn, and the queen side pass pawns are winning the game. So overall, yeah, this line with bishop takes c5, or I can say already with knight a6, is quite problematic for black, or I can say not good. And even though there were some inaccuracies in the game, eventually this knight on a6 didn't manage to find the way back to the game. So Botvinnik managed to convert it into a win. So thanks a lot for watching, and hope to see you soon with some other video in the Queen b3 Nimzo.